Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be doing my very first book tag, which is the Unpopular Opinion book tag. Now I'm going to put the link in somewhere down below for the original source for this book tag. As the title of the tag kind of gestures towards, this book tag consists of a series of questions about your unpopular opinions about books. Question number 1 is a popular book or series that you did not like. For me, I am going to go with Looking for Alaska by John Green. Now, before any of you nerd fighters kind of jump on me, I just want to say that I actually love John Green as a writer. His writing style is phenomenal, and I think he's a phenomenal storyteller. I'm a huge fan of The Fault in Our Stars, which I'm pretty sure everyone is, but still. I first tried to read this book years ago when it first came out, actually, before John Green had kind of become the huge sensation that he is right now. God, that sounded hipster. And for some reason, I could just not get into this book. It wasn't actually Green's writing style that disappointed or made me disinterested. I just wasn't a fan of the characters. And the defense of this book and the fans of the book, I haven't actually tried to read it again recently, so I should probably give it a go, especially because I've gotten into some of Green's other books since I originally tried to read this book. Question number 2 is a popular book or series that everyone seems to hate but you love. Now, I'm not sure if everyone hates this book, but I have heard a lot of complaints about The Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. The number one complaint that people seem to have or really jump onto hating is the love interest situation going on in the series. Now, I'm not going to give any spoilers for those of you who haven't read it, but for those of you who have and have an issue with it, you know what I'm talking about. While I completely recognize why some people have issues with this series, I loved everything else going on in the series so much that I was able to look past it and just be madly in love with it anyways. Question number 3 is a book with a love triangle where the main character ends up with the person that you didn't want them to end up with. I feel like this happens a lot, actually. I always love the person that I feel like the author doesn't want you to, or kind of sets all odds against. But for this, I'm going to go with the Grisha trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. I feel like I've mentioned it before, or maybe not yet, but I am in love with the series. And I wasn't unhappy with who Elena ended up with. I'm not going to spoil anything for anyone, but there are actually 2 other possibilities that I would have been even more pleased with. And to be honest, I feel like that's kind of the general consensus with this book. There are other possible love interests, I guess I will say, without spoiling anything, that most people who I've seen talk about this book are probably just as passionate about as I am. But I can't even complain. I love this. This trilogy is so good, guys. If you haven't read it, please just go read it. Just go. Question number 4 is a popular genre you hardly read. Now, I don't really have an answer for this question, actually. My taste in books is kind of all over the place, and I like to dabble even in genres I'm not as invested in. Like fantasy and sci-fi are probably my top 2 favorite genres, but I'm still a super big fan of like the classics or historic or even non-fiction type of literature, so I really don't have an answer for this question. Question number 5 is a popular character or a beloved character that everyone seems to be passionate about that you cannot stand. For this question, I am going to go with America Singer from the selection. I don't know that everyone is in love with this character or if this character would be considered beloved, but I find like it's a very kind of decisive line for people who love this series and love America or absolutely loathe it, and I feel like I'm kind of floating somewhere in the middle. I like the concept of the book series. Actually, I guess I should kind of mention that one of my guilty pleasures is The Bachelor, and I'm also a huge fan of The Hunger Games, which is kind of the 2 things that many people say that this series is a mishmash of, which is probably why I actually like the idea behind it. But the actual character of America really annoys me. If I were to have to deal with America in real life, I probably would just throw large blunt objects at her head. A lot. Number 6 is a popular author that you just can't seem to get into. For this, I am going to go with Ali Condi, who wrote the Matched book series. Now, I don't know if the author herself would be considered popular, but I know for a while, especially when this book series was kind of fresh, that people were raving about it. And it wasn't that I disliked the writing or the characters per se. It was just something where I had to force myself to get through the first book, and I have all three, but I have yet to finish the series. Don't know if I will. Question number 7 is a popular book trope that you are tired of seeing. There are a lot of these that I am really tired of seeing, to be honest, but the first one that popped into my head was the kind of chosen one trope. Now, I feel like this can be done well, just like many other kind of misused or abused tropes, but it's become such a frequent trope, and especially young adult books, that I'm just so sick of it. As soon as I see that someone is special or the chosen one, it takes a lot for me to continue with the book or to purchase it even. A lot of the times it says it right on the cover of the book and it just makes me gag. A perfect example of how to do the chosen one trope excellently is obviously the Harry Potter series. I mean, if it makes sense, it makes sense for the overall storyline of the novel. I just feel like as soon as something is done well and becomes popular, everyone jumps on it. So as soon as Harry Potter became like a huge sensation, it became more and more apparent that this trope was being used in modern fiction. And most of the time, it isn't done well. A character can be special and be excellently written without them being the chosen one who has to save the entire universe of the book. They can do wonderful things, and they do not need to be the salvation of the entire series or the entire universe. It's just a bit out of control, people. Come on. Question number 8 is any series that you have no interest in reading. Now for this question, I'm going to cheat a little and pick 2 because the first thing that popped into my head was anything by Becca Fitzpatrick. I'm not going to rant about how I feel about her writing because I'm sure there are many people out there who are big fans of her. I am not one of them. Specifically, the Hush Hush series. Now, I started reading that series when it initially came out, probably around the time that I was in my Twilight phase, but because it was kind of heavily attached to Twilight or being similar, which I can see the similarities, but at the same time, Hush Hush is so much worse than Twilight, and it sets so many negative examples for young girls as to what a proper relationship looks like or what are acceptable behaviors, and I'm going to stop ranting about her or we will be here all night. The second answer I'm going to give for this question is The Forest of Hands and Teeth, which was a book that I was really hyped up about for a really long time. The cover is really cool in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of having a face or an actual human where they're completely visible on the front, but it's kind of cool and eerie, and it goes along with the title. The titles of all 3 of the books in this series are really endearing, actually, which is what made me want to pick up the book series. And the idea, especially considering the time it came out, sounded really interesting to me, so I read the first book in this series, and I was not pleased. There were bits and pieces that I thought were intriguing, but the ending of this book, and I'm not going to spoil it, but anyone who's read this book, left a very sour taste in my mouth, especially when you pick up the second book, you read the back of it, and you find out what's going on. I'm not going to say anything else because I don't want to spoil it for those of you who want to read it, but for those of you who have read it or are kind of aware of the series, you know what I'm talking about. I have all 3 of these books. I will not be reading past the first one. Question number 9, which is the final question in this book tag, is name a TV or film adaptation of a book that you enjoyed better than the book. Now this almost never happens for me. 99% of the time I like the book significantly better than I like the film or TV adaptation. Not that film or TV adaptations are always bad, it's just that they're 2 completely different forms of media, and I personally prefer to consume books than a TV or a movie. I'm going to cheat a bit again and give kind of 2 answers. My first answer is going to be the Vampire Diaries series because I actually was a pretty big fan of the TV show the first few seasons. I felt like it captured the kind of universe of the books very well, but enhanced it. This is another one of those book series where I read it a really long time ago, and when the TV show came on, I kind of went back and flipped to the books and realized that I was enjoying the TV show more than I enjoyed the books. Now, I stopped watching The Vampire Diaries a couple seasons ago because I had some serious issues with the way that they were running the show, but initially I thought it was pretty good. Second one I'm going to choose is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. Now, the book was phenomenal. The movie was phenomenal. I feel like they casted the role so well, but there were a couple scenes in the movie that I felt got me and were kind of more emotionally crippling in the movie than they were in the book. For example, the scene with the line about the robot eyes. I'm not going to spoil it, but for those of you who've seen the book or read the movie, you know what I'm talking about. I cried so hard when I watched that in the movie, whereas I didn't react as heavily when I read that portion in the book. It still makes me cry every time I see the movie. That is the end of this tag, guys. Thank you for watching. I could probably go on a really long time because I feel like I have a lot of unpopular opinions when pertaining to books. But I'm going to end it at the allotted amount of questions from the original video. Do you share any of my unpopular opinions? Or do you disagree with any of my unpopular opinions? Leave comments down below so we can talk, guys. Thank you for tuning in and have a nice day.